Guy Fawkes was born in Stonegate, York, the second of 4 children. His father, Edward Fawkes, a proctor and advocate of consistory court at York. His mother was Edith. They were regular Church of England goers. His mother's side of the family were Catholics. His cousin, Richard Cowling, became a Jesuit priest. Guy was an uncommon name in England at the time. He was baptised in the Church of St Michael the Belfry in 1568. His mother gave birth to a daughter named Anne, but she died 7 weeks later. Later came 2 more children, another Anne 1572, Elizabeth 1575, and in 1579, at the age of 8, Guy's father died. His mother remarried several years later to a Catholic, Dennis Bainbridge of Harrogate. It is at this time believed Guy changed religion to become a Catholic. After leaving school, Guy was employed by Anthony Browne, 1st Viscount Montague, who took a dislike to him and soon dismissed him. He was then employed by Anthony Maria Browne, 2nd Viscount Montague, who succeeded his grandfather at the age of 18. In October 1591, Guy Fawkes sold his estate that he had inherited from his father. He travelled to the continent to fight in the 80 Years' War for the Catholic Spanish army against the new Dutch Republic, and from 1595 until the Peace of Vernes in 1598 France. At this time, England was not engaged in land operations against Spain. The 2 countries were still at war. Guy joined Sir William Stanley, an English Catholic and veteran commander in his mid-40s who had raised an army in Ireland to fight in Leicester's expedition to the Netherlands. Stanley was held in high regard by Elizabeth I, but following his surrender to the Spanish in 1587, most of his troops had switched sides to serve Spain. Guy became junior officer and fought well at the Siege of Calais in 1596, but by 1603 he had been recommended captaincy. He travelled to Spain to seek support for a Catholic rebellion in England. He used this time to change his name to the Italian Guido, meaning Guy. In 1604, Fawkes became involved with a small group of English Catholics led by Robert Catesby, who planned to assassinate the Protestant King James and replace him with his daughter, 3rd in line to succession, Princess Elizabeth. Fawkes was described by the Jesuit priest and former school friend Oswald Testament as having a pleasant approach and cheerful manner, opposed to quarrels and strife, and loyal to his friends, a man highly skilled in matters of war. All these traits endeared him to his fellow conspirators. Fawkes was described as a tall, powerful built man with thick reddish-brown hair and flowing moustache, in the tradition of the time, and a bushy reddish-brown beard, a man of action and very capable of intelligent argument. The first meeting of the 5 central conspirators took place on Sunday the 20th of May 1604 at the Duck and Drake Inn in the Strand, London. It had already been suggested at an earlier meeting by Catesby with Thomas Winter and John Wright to kill the king and his government by blowing up the Parliament House with gunpowder. Winter at first objected to the plan, but was convinced by Catesby to travel to the continent to seek help. Winter met with Constable of Castile, the exiled Welsh spy Hugh Owen, and Sir William Stanley, who said Catesby would receive no support from Spain. Owen did introduce Winter to Guy Fawkes, who led them and had been away from England for many years and had become largely unknown. Winter and Fawkes were contemporaries, very militant, and had experience of the Spaniards' unwillingness to help. Another conspirator, Thomas Percy, was appointed gentleman pensioner in June 1604, gaining access to the house in London belonging to John Wynyard, keeper of the King's wardrobe. Fawkes was installed as a caretaker and used the name John Johnson, servant to Percy. Stories suggest that the conspirators attempted to dig a tunnel from beneath Wynyard's house to Parliament. This may have been a government fabrication, as no evidence of the tunnel was ever found. By December 1604, the conspirators were busy tunnelling from their rented house to the House of Lords. This was later ceased as a noise from above was heard when Fawkes went to investigate. He returned saying the tenant's widow was cleaning out a nearby undercroft directly beneath the House of Lords. The plotters purchased a lease to the room belonging to John Wynyard. It was unused and dirty, the perfect hiding place for the gunpowder. The plotters planned to store 20 barrels of gunpowder there, followed by 16 more on the 20th of July. On the 28th of July, due to the threat of the plague, it delayed the opening of Parliament until Tuesday the 5th of November. In May 1605, Fawkes travelled overseas to gain foreign support and inform Hugh Owen of the plotters' plan. It was during this trip that Fawkes' name made his way to Robert Cecil, the first Earl of Salisbury, who ran a network of spies across Europe. One such spy, a Captain William Turner, who may have been responsible, reported a vague pattern of invasion reports, but nothing regarding the gunpowder plot, and said Fawkes must be brought back to England. In late August 1605, Fawkes returned to England, namely London. He and Wintour discovered that the gunpowder stored in the undercroft had decayed. More gunpowder was put in the room with firewood to conceal it. Fawkes' final role in the plot was settled by a series of meetings in October. He was to light the fuse and then escape across the Thames. At the same time, a revolt in the Midlands would help ensure the capture of Princess Elizabeth. On the evening of the 26th of October, Lord Monteagle received an anonymous letter warning him to stay away from Parliament, as it was to receive a terrible blow. The conspirators soon became aware of the letter by one of the Monteagle's servants, but thought it was a hoax and continued with their plan. Fawkes checked the undercroft on the 30th of October and nothing had been disturbed. Monteagle became suspicious and the letter was shown to King James. He then ordered a search of the cellars underneath Parliament. This was done in the early hours of the 5th of November. Fawkes took up his position late on the previous night, armed with a slow match and a watch. He was found leaving the cellar soon after midnight and arrested. The barrels of gunpowder were discovered underneath piles of firewood and coal. Fawkes gave his name as John Johnson. He was interrogated by the King's Privy Chamber and he remained defiant. When asked why he was in possession of so much gunpowder, Fawkes replied, "To blow you Scottish beggars back to your native mountains." He said he was a 36-year-old Catholic from Neverdale in Yorkshire, giving his father's name as Thomas and mother was Edith Jackson. When asked what the wounds were on his back, he said it was from pleurisy. He admitted his intention to blow up the House of Lords and expressed regret in doing so. King James ordered on the 6th of November that John Johnson be tortured to reveal the names of his co-conspirators. They started by using manacles, but more severe if necessary using the rack. Fawkes was put in the Tower of London. On searching a letter, it was found that on his person there was a letter addressed to Guy Fawkes. Fawkes revealed his true identity on the 7th of November and said that there were 5 people involved in the plot to kill one king. On the 8th of November, he revealed their names and their intention to put Princess Elizabeth on the throne. His third confession on the 9th of November implicated Francis Tresham. He was forced to dictate his confession, then copy and sign. The trial of the 8 plotters began on Monday the 27th of January 1606. Fawkes shared the barge from the Tower to Westminster Hall with 7 of his co-conspirators. They were held in the Star Chamber before being taken to Westminster Hall, where they were displayed on a purpose-built scaffold. The king and his family watched on in secret. Guy Fawkes pleaded not guilty, but the jury found them all guilty. Lord Chief Justice Sir John Popham pronounced them guilty of high treason. The Attorney General, Sir Edward Coke, told the court that each of them condemned would be drawn backwards to his death by a horse, his head near their ground, and their genitals cut off and burnt before their eyes and their hearts and bowels removed. They would be decapitated and the dismembered parts of their bodies displayed. On January the 31st, 1606, Fawkes and Thomas Winter, Ambrose Rockwood, Robert Keyes were dragged from the tower on wattled hurdles to the old palace yard at Westminster opposite the building they had attempted to destroy. His fellow plotters were then hanged and quartered. Fawkes was the last on the scaffold. He asked for the king's forgiveness. Weakened by torture and helped by the hangman, Fawkes climbed to the ladder onto the noose, either by jumping to his death or climbing too high so the rope was incorrectly set. He managed to avoid the agony of the latter part of the execution by breaking his neck. His lifeless body was nevertheless quartered, his body parts distributed to the four corners of the kingdom to be displayed as a warning to others who would be traitors. On the 5th of November 1605, Londoners were encouraged to celebrate the king's escape from assassination by lighting bonfires. An Act of Parliament designated each 5th of November as a day of thanksgiving for the joyful day of deliverance. This remained until 1859. In Britain, the 5th of November is called Guy Fawkes Night or Bonfire Night. From the 1650s, fireworks accompanied the fire, and then from 1673 it became a custom to burn an effigy, usually of a pope. Now it can be any notable figure. So ends the fascinating story of Guy Fawkes and the origins of Bonfire Night. In the immortal words of Phoenix history, because history matters.